पराशर समारंभां वृद्धगर्गादि मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरु परंपराम्. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿರುವಂತಹ ವಿದ್ವಾಂಸರಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು, ಉತ್ಸುಕರಿಗೆ ಕೂಡ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. I work in the Center for Ancient History and Culture in Jain University in Bangalore, which is an organization that is focusing on research into the intellectual and cultural history of India, of this region, in the before the Common Era period, in the very ancient period. And so there is a IKS center which is funded by the Ministry of Education, the Indian Knowledge System Center, and I work as a part of this center. And I am also a student of PhD, with my supervisor being Professor R.N. Iyengar, who is the director of this center. And as a part of my PhD, this is one of the work that I would like to present to you today. So, to start with, when we look at comets and ancient records of those comets, there are, incidentally, what we find is there are not many records of cometary observations that we find in India. Okay, lot of comets have come. Contemporary records we find in Chinese, European, and other parts of the world, but not much in India. Actually, I mean, recently all this triggered because during my own lifetime, I actually happened to see hail bomb, which came in 1997, and this triggered my curiosity. I'm sure there were comets before, which people would have observed, but we don't find many records. And if we look at the timeline, during the medieval period, there are indeed some records. During the time of Akbar, Jahangir, Aurangzeb, there are comets that have been recorded. The picture there is from Suzuki Jahangiri, where there is the astronomer looking at the sky. There is no comet in that photograph. But supposedly in 1618, a comet is supposed to have appeared, and in 1.5 years later, there was a meteorite. I don't know if there was any association between those. A metallic meteorite actually fell down somewhere in Gujarat, and that was ultimately sent to Jahangir. Jahangir supposedly was a very enthusiast in natural science, and he would make records and go with these scientists. And he supposed to have made a dagger, and that's from the museum there. So there was some records, but during the same time, contemporaneous to this period, as well as starting from somewhere around 5th century, we had Siddhantic astronomy in India. Siddhantic astronomy starting from Aryabhata and Panchasiddhantika of Varahamihira. So in the Siddhantic astronomy, no comets are mentioned at all. They look at the sun, moon, they look at the planets, but no comets, no records of comets. That's very surprising. That probably is because the Varahamihira also mentions that comets cannot be predicted by mathematics, and perhaps the focus of Siddhantic astronomy being Ganita and prediction of celestial bodies based on Ganitam, they probably ignored it. And afterwards, later, in the last millennium, we see that the word Ketu ended up being used for descending lunar node, and I'll mention that briefly again. So that is nothing to do with comets there as well. But the word is very old, so we look at some history of that. So today I am going to, even though the topic is about Aśva Sūkta and Ṛgveda, there is a reasonably significant introduction that I would like to lead you with. My own exploration went into all these things and ultimately landed up with the Aśva Sūkta and the Ṛgveda, and I would like to lead you through that. So you'll have to bear with me for this longer introduction of this presentation. Now, before that period, we do find some ancient record preserved in multiple sources. A cycle of 26 comets, which probably is from the Vedanga period, okay, post-Veda, Vedanga kind of period, approximately. And where do we find these record in? Number one, we find it in Brihad Samhita, which is from the 6th century of Varahamihira. Then later, few centuries later, one of his commentators, Utpala Bhattotpala, in his Utpala Vivriti of the Brihad Samhita, elaborates and seems to quote from much more older sources. And when I say older sources, that is also mentioned by Varahamihira in his Brihad Samhita. So Brihad Samhita has a chapter called Ketu Chara. Okay? Ketu, again the word Ketu is used here. Chara means movement. And in this chapter on cometary movements, Varahamihira lists 1,000 Ketus, and it seems to be jumbled up. And that is very surprising. The whole chapter is not very coherent. And that probably is explained by the first shloka of that chapter. What Varahamihira says is that he says, all that I am saying is what Parashara, Garga, Asita and Devala have said in the past. That is, he makes this pratigna, he makes this statement and then goes on with this chapter. Looks like it is a jumble of ancient memories and quotations from these earlier publications, earlier scientific publications, earlier authors. But that gets clarified in Utpala Vivriti, which is the commentary of Brihad Samhita, where Utpala readily quotes from primarily Parashara, also from a few other authors. Parashara is already mentioned by Brihad Samhita, and he seems to have had access to a work of Parashara at that time, in the 9th century Kashmir. Today, no manuscript of Parashara is available, so that Grantha is lost as of now. However, Utpala seems to have access to it, and he quotes from Parashara, and then from the quotations we realize that the Brihad Samhita content is just a rehash of Parashara's erroneous rehash. So there are a lot of errors that get introduced, whereas Parashara's text on the comets seem to be very coherent. And later, in the 12th and the 13th century, there is another work called Adbhuta Sagara. The word Adbhuta is also very interesting. In our culture, Adbhuta is used, right? When we use that even in today's languages, Yad Abhutam Adbhutam Uchyate is the nirvachana of that. So something that is not known in the past, something that comes out as a surprise, unexpected, is called Adbhuta. And all such phenomena are collated of his time, is collated in this Grantha. And the author of this Grantha, Ballada Sena, originally from Karnataka, who ends up becoming the king of Mithila. And incidentally the Nalanda is under him. He was also the ruler of Nalanda, and Nalanda was at its peak during the it was not destroyed at this time. So Ballada Sena groups the natural phenomenon, the strange natural phenomena, into 3 parts. Bhaumadbhuta, the ones that are in the terrestrial, atmospheric, that is Antariksha, and Divya. Divyadbhuta is the ones, Dyauhu is the word, right? Dyauhu is the outer space or the sky. Celestial is another term for that. And Divyam is that which is Divi. Divi samsthitam Divyam. And the Ketuchara chapter, the Ketvadbhutavarta chapter, is in the Divyadbhuta. So he says it is celestial. All the comets are all celestial bodies. They are not atmospheric. This is very unlike the Greek records, where they thought this was something in the atmosphere and things like that. So these are the 3 primary sources. Besides this, there is also a new source that was discovered in our center. From the quotations of these people, we know that one of the important works, the Vruddhagarga, the work of Vruddhagarga gets heavily quoted by these authors. So, fortunately, we have many surviving manuscripts of Ṛgveda, primarily in North India, and now of course in the rest of the world because they have travelled. So there is also some additional information there. We have dated, so there is a publication on how we dated the Ṛgveda's work, VGJ we call it, Ṛgveda Jyotisham. In the catalogue it shows up as Ṛgveda Samhita, which is a very large work. I'll go into details of that. And these comments seem, they are about for a period of more than 1000 years, 1000 to 1200 years duration. There is duration, there is year numbers, after how many years the next comet was seen, after how many years after that the next comet was seen, how it was. There are a lot of descriptions of the comets. Some of the descriptions are very pictures, some of them are very minimalist. So there seems to be an old memory of a period of comets that got preserved in this tradition. And Ṛgveda is dated to, it seems to be an accretive text, a text that got accreted over time. There is one chapter where we found astronomical information that could be dated to 1300 BC. There is another chapter there where we could date it to a much later period, about 500 BC. After that, there was, looks like around the, just before the Common Era, this Grantha got frozen, looks like, as of now. So this, just slightly more information on this new finding. The Ṛgveda manuscripts, we were able to collate about 15 of them, out of which 10 of the manuscripts have the information that we want, and it looks like it has been passed on, and there are a lot of transmission errors. So none of the manuscripts have the perfect collection of this particular chapter. So there is a chapter called Ketu Mala. Okay, it's a very large chapter, 232 shlokas, and the whole Grantha is about 600 shlokas, some in Gadya, some in Padya, and it also claims to have 64 angas in it. This happens to be one of the angas. Now, along with this chapter, there is another chapter which seems to be an introductory and ancient chapter in this particular Grantha called Mahasalinam. And it's a very interesting chapter because it has a list of about 100 questions on natural science. So this seems to be a book on natural science in those days. There are questions like on comets. There are a few questions. I have underlined that in blue. Katham tu ime dhumaketava pradurbhutaha. How are the dhumaketus born? So the word that they use is dhumaketu here. In the earlier ones in the Brihad Samhita and stuff, ketu is used. Here, ketu is used as well as dhumaketu. And kativa parisankhyaayante. How many are there? And then what are their colors and tails? Who are visible? Which of these ketus are visible? Which of them are not visible? Antarhita. So which means it doesn't say that they don't exist, but they are probably hidden. They are yet to come or they have come long ago, but as of now they are hidden. And then this also has answers. So for example, the answer goes something like, there is a small extract. I'll read. Vedoktanam grahanam ashtashatam sankhyayate. So the word ashtashatam is not used in Sanskritam of today. This is a very ancient use, and the ancient texts have such usage of numbers, additive. So it says 108. So there are 108 grahas. This is probably the first occurrence of the word 108. Okay, probably. This is not published yet. I am just reading out of the manuscript. All these are editing works that are currently in progress in our research center. And tatra ekashatam ketunam pathyate. What it says is 108 are the grahas. Out of these grahas, 7 are the sun, moon and the 5 planets. The remaining 101 are actually ketus. There are 101 ketus is what it says. And this also matches with some of the contemporary puja vidhanam, prayoga pustakani. Some of the prayogas, when the Navagraha puja, ketu is actually in the shlokas is mentioned in bahuvachana. And some people are very surprised how in the astrology of today, ketu, rahu, ketu, ketave namaha, it is a ekavachana. But there are a lot of prayoga shlokas where ketu is ketavaha. Okay, so this kind of matches with that. It's plural. Ketus are in plural. 101 ketus are mentioned there. And it also goes into nirvachana of the word. because it produces, it has a tail, it has a shikha. So the tail of the trail or the tail of the comet is called as a shikha, the tuft of hair flying in the sky, and it upadhupayate nakshatrani. So it smokes the stars. When it passes in front of the stars get smoked. So it is called Dhumaketu because of that is what Mahasalinam says. But the actual chapter, the Ketu Mala chapter, it goes on, there is a small example there. Evam Prushto Mahateja Gargastay Rishivistada, it is starting, okay? Having thus inquired by the Rishis, Garga responds, Ketuchara Samutpattim Sarvam Vistarato Bravi. Then he goes on to explain each category of Ketu. So 101 Ketus are there. Which of those 101? So he says, Mrityu Sambhavas Tesham Ketavaha Shodasha Smritaha. There are 16 that formed out of Mrityu, maybe Yama or something like that, out of death. Okay. Then Ekadesha cha Vijneya Dvadashaditya Ekadeshe cha Vijneya Dvadashaditya Sambhava. So there are 12 Ketus that have born out of the sun. Okay, and sun, 12 is a number that is associated with the sun also. Goes back to the Vedas. Some of these numbers are found in the Vedas as well with similar associations. And so like this it goes on. So a lot of categories of Ketus are mentioned in this particular Grantha. It's very interesting. And it goes on to say, out of these 101, 26 were visible. And it goes on to describe where they were visible, what happened during that time. And also there is some of the interesting things are there are some, there seems to be some historic records also. Like when the comet came, the Mahashakas attacked India and some cities got destroyed. Some historic information seems to be there. Work is going on that front. So this is another information of during the ancient period mention of Ketus. Having seen that, some of the Ketus that are mentioned there, the names are very interesting. There is one which is Chalaketu, which is said as it looks like a shula. Okay. Then there is another Ketu called Brahmadanda, which is like a Trishula, and which is like a trident. And the word Vishwarupa is also used. And in the Vedas we know Vishwarupa was a three-headed devata, deity, three-headed deity, and as the son of a deity called Tvashta. And Tvashta was the celestial, the heavenly carpenter. He would cut things, Tachan in Tamil. So Tvashta, he was the son of that. So there is a theory that it could probably these Harappan seals would probably be referring to Vishwarupa or a cometary image. There are some theories like this. I just wanted to share in other earlier works from other scholars. R.N. Iyengar's work primarily. And these happen to be, this is actually Hale Boppet again. And on the top is NK. Okay? You can see that comet is not just one tail. There is a dust tail and then there is a plasma tail. And there are various technical reasons why multiple tails occur in a comet. And sometimes there are effusions and there are heterogeneous, non-uniform body surface, and then there will be multiple tufts coming out in some cases. And in these works, in the 26 comets that I mentioned, I would like to show you some of the names. The names are very interesting. Dhumaketu we already saw. There is a name called Kabandha. Kabandha is also a Rakshasa in the Itihasa Purana, truncated human body. There is a name called Brahmadanda, which is again mentioned in Puranas. And there is as you know, there is a very tight connection between Vedas and Puranas, right? Itihasa Purana, Vyam, Vedam, Samukha, Brahmaye. So this connection is known to us in our culture. And I could actually, it was interesting for me to actually see it here. There was a Vishwarupa, again is a Vedic deity, Shweta Ketu. Ka is a Vedic deity. There is a comet called Ka. And while Shweta Ketu causes famine, in the same time that Shweta Ketu comes, it is said that Ka also appears in the west. While Shweta Ketu is in the east. And both are very gruesome comets. Some of the comets are very benevolent. They cause good things on the earth. Some of the comets are said to be very fierce and gruesome and cause disasters and stuff. And Some of the comets are also mentioned in these books along with some amount of astronomical information of their path. Some amount, we are trying to decipher that to see if we can get any hint on their orbit. Okay, it is not easy because the information is not coherent. There is a lot of information loss and errors that are crept in. And then there is a comet called Dhruva Ketu, there is a comet of Chala Ketu that I showed earlier. While we saw these names, even we know that even today Indian languages carry the word Dhumaketu for comet. Okay, looks like this is a very ancient tradition. It is not a new coinage. That is one thing that we can guess from this. And Dhumaketu, even though Ketu is used, as I mentioned earlier, in our Panchanga today, and in the astrological, the Halita Jyotisha works from about 13th century, we see the word Ketu used not for comets but for descending lunar node, right? So that seems to be a recent development or a recent, should I say, divergence in the meaning. Okay, what are the origins of this divergence? We don't know. Earlier, in fact, during the same period, during the same so-called middle period, in the Ganita Jyotisha books, in the Siddhantic Jyotisha books, the word for descending lunar node is not Ketu. Ketu is used exclusively in the Jataka and the Hora and these kind of astrological books. In the Siddhantic books, the word used is Pata for both the nodes. And but then in literature it continues. For example, the 13th century book Gita Govinda uses the word Dhumaketu. Dhumaketu Rivaketu Karalam is mentioned there. And as I said earlier, if you notice, some of these names actually also are names of Vedic deities in the Ṛgveda, also in the Yajurveda. There are Vedic. This makes us curious towards, can we find comments in the Vedas at all? Before that, I would like to take again another small detour into one methodology that we have employed in this work. Here is Yaskacharya, as you know, was a commentator on the Vedas with his Nirukta. And he says every mantra can have 3 points of view, or in other words, 3 kinds of meanings. Adhi stands for location. Okay? He says, if I look at a mantra from a Adhi Daivatam, see again I said earlier, Divya or Daivata, Divi Samsthitam Daivatam. So that which is celestial is the ancient meaning of Daivatam. It appears to be the ancient meaning. There are other meanings for that as well. And today, as you know, languages evolve, so the meanings also evolve. So there are a lot more meanings attributed to these words. I am looking at this meaning where it is Divi Samsthitam Daivatam, that which is celestial. So Adi Daivatam refers to celestial information. So he says in one of the mantras in the 10th mandala, 85th Sūkta, Somam manyate papivan yatsam pikshanti aushadhim, goes the mantra where Vyaska says, here the word Soma, if you take, you has to be taken in Adi Daivata meaning, because Brahmano vidurnatasya ashnati kaschana. He looks at that. The wise people know that nobody is drinking this Soma. Otherwise, from a yajna meaning, Soma is the Soma rasa. When you squeeze when you pound the Soma creeper, the juice that comes out of it is the Soma rasa. So from a yajna, that is used in the yajnas. So from a yajna meaning, in the Adhi Yajnam, Rupa Visheshai Roshadhihi, he says. So it is actually the Lata. When you hear the word Soma, you understand it is the Soma Lata or the Soma juice. Okay? From a Yajna meaning. But Yaska says, in this mantra, you should not take the Yajna meaning. This mantra is talking of Adi Daivatam. So take that point of view, where take a celestial point of view in this mantra. So which means Soma is basically Vidush Chandramasam. So the Brahmano Viduhu, they are referring to moon, is what he says. Similarly, there is another viewpoint that Yaska uses, not for this particular mantra alone, but elsewhere, which is called Adhyatma. Atma means self, right? Self, body or self or whatever, me. And Adhyatma means on me. So in that case, for example, in Indra, in Adhyatma meaning would mean my organs, sense organs, Indriya. So that would be the Adhyatma meaning. And Soma incidentally we know from the Brahmanas and the Upanishads, Soma refers to Manas in the bodily or the human meaning of the mantra. And there is another important thing that we need to know as from a background perspective. See the division that I showed you in Adbhuta Sagara, that Ballada Sena, the Karnataka warrior who went to Bengal and became the king there. That division is a very culturally very strong, it's a very ancient parampara. We find that in the Vedas also. For example, this mantra, Vidmate Agne Tredha Trayani. So it talks about, hey Agni, we know you and in 3 forms. That is what the Rishi, the Drashta, the mantra is telling. And the Brihat Devata for that mantra says that if a fire is found in the atmosphere, it should be called Jata Vedaha. If it is found in the celestial, it should be called Vaishvanara. And if it is found on the earth, it can be called Agni, is what Brihat Devata says. Brihat Devata is again a kind of commentary on these Devatas, Vedic Devatas. So with this background, let me move ahead. Coming back to the word Ketu and Dhumaketu in the Vedas, as I said, with the curiosity that we got that the names are common with the Vedas, so there can we apply this Yaska's methodology of looking at Adhidaivata viewpoints of the mantras, celestial view of the mantras, where if you read if there is a mantra, we listen to it, some of the mantras are very clearly it is celestial. Okay, Yadrigeva, there is a mantra, for example, very famous mantra, Yadrigeva Drishyate Tadrivichyate. As I am seeing, I am telling. So the Rishi, the Drashta, is telling, as I am seeing, I am telling that. So and he refers to something happening in the sky. And he uses the word Divya or Divi or Paramam or Uttamam. Uttamam, Paramam, these are all above. Right? It could also refer to the above of the, so that's very interesting. Above also refers to the pole, the celestial pole. So that is also considered above. So there are mantras like that. So where there are mantras where it is explicitly the locus can be seen as celestial, can be applied the Yaska's methodology. So there is already a work, 2010, Iyengar 2010 by Professor Arun Iyengar. That investigation goes on to look at the word, see the word Ketu 82 times in the Ṛgveda, Ketu appears. So it's very complex and various meanings, various contexts. So it's not very clear. But then, there are other Ketus that there is a compound word that appears 5 times Dhuma Ketu, once Bhasa Ketu, once Vrisha Ketu. So 7 such compound Ketu words appear in the Ṛgveda. So this investigation, what it does is, and also there are words like Maruta. See, today in modern Sanskritam, Marut means wind, Vayu. But in Vedas it's very clear, the Devatas are very well differentiated. Okay, Vayu is a different Devata, Marutaha is a plural Devata, and it was always in Gana. And the descriptions are different. Sometimes it looks like wind, but not always. In a lot of places it doesn't look like it's talking about wind. It's actually talking about fire. Okay, so the investigation also looks at the word Marut as well as Dhumaketu. And here is some examples I am quoting from that paper. There is a famous shloka, Ashvannatva Varavantam Vandadhya Agnim Namobhi. And that's a Sūkta. There are multiple mantras I am quoting from. Sano Mahang Animano Dhumaketu Purushchandraha. And then Vishpatir Daivyaha Uttairatmir Brihat Bhanuhu. So basically what it is talking about is Varavantam. Vara, as you know in Sanskritam, Vara, Vala, Bala is tail. Okay, Varavantam Aśvam. So the mantra is telling there is a horse, tailed horse, and it is in the sky. And Daivyaha, so Vishpatir Daivyaha, it is in the sky. And then Purush Chandra, so it says Animana, which means it has, we can't specify its dimension, it is changing dimension. And then it is very big, it has a very wide motion. It goes, say, unlike these planets which have a very straightforward motion, this thing seems to have a wide motion. It goes all around the place. And it also talks about colorful, okay, how it is, Purush Chandra actually refers to colorful. So this work concludes that Dhumaketu word in the Veda, in the Ṛgveda, refers to comet or any such transient celestial objects which could include comets and meteors when looked at these mantras in the Adi Devata meaning. That doesn't mean these mantras don't have Adi Yajna and Adi Atma meaning. It might have, but this investigation focused on Adi Devata. So with that, now coming to the topic of what I wanted to present. Okay, so see, my focus is on Aśva Sūkta. Okay, now there are two Aśva Sūktas in Ṛgveda. One is the first, both are in first mandala. One is the Sūkta number 162 and the other one is 163. 162 is bigger, 22 mantras, 163 is 13 mantras. And I am going to focus only on 163, just with one Sūkta, because otherwise it will be a very big, too much of information investigation. So why are these called Aśva Sūkta? These Sūktas, the Devata for this Sūkta is Aśva. Okay, Aśva is the Devata. And as we know today, Aśva actually means horse. And where is this Sūkta used? The Prayoga in the Śrauta Sūktas, Śrauta Sutras, we see that both these are used during the Aśvamedha ritual, Aśvamedha Yaga. Aśvamedha Yaga is a very complicated yaga. In fact, the Śrauta Sutras, the Parishishthas and the Prayoga Granthas, all these, and including the Brahmanas, where the Aśvamedha Yagas are described, and the Yajurveda Samhitas. So there is a lot of fragmentary but lot of documentation of Aśvamedha. Okay? And we have historically also, we have some records of this emperor did Aśvamedha, that emperor did Aśvamedha, both in textual as well as in other evidences, including in inscriptions. But in the recent past, Aśvamedha was probably not done. And it is also said that it is done only by it should be done only by a Chakravarti, a Adhipati, emperor who controls all the other kings under his domain. Such person can only do this. And it's a very complex ritual because it goes on for more than a year, 1 year, 1 month. So there is a connection of Aśvamedha ritual to the Samvatsara, to the year. It starts with Phalguna and ends in Chaitra. If you take Chaitra, first of Chaitra as the New Year's Day, Yugadi or whatever. So it starts slightly before New Year's Day, 15 days before New Year's Day, 14 days before, and it ends slightly after the New Year, next New Year. Okay. So it is and there is a lot of Brahmana mantras which says that there is a strong connection of Aśvamedha with Samvatsara. Okay. And so that is the background of Aśvamedha. Okay. And it involves a horse, and there is a lot of documentation, the Western Indologists as well as Indian traditional documentation on the procedure of Aśvamedha. It involves a horse, a very special horse, and the horse will be slaughtered and sacrificed in fire, and it is believed that the horse is going to rise up to the heavens, and the king will, the emperor who conducts this will get immense benefits, all kinds of benefits. And even the Rashtra, okay, Aśvamedha Yaga is not an individual Yaga. So one individual it's not considered that one individual is conducting this ritual for his or her benefit. It is a Rashtriya Yaga, which means it is a national festival, it's a national ritual. So it is meant for the benefit of the nation. And okay, now coming back, these two suktas are the Drashta, Mantra Drashta, the seer for this is Rishi Dirghatama, who happens to be the son of Uchatya. So he is called Dirghatama Uchatya. And his mother is Mamata. And there is a story, very interesting story behind this Rishi. And this Rishi is supposed to be blind. One of the stories says he was blind. Another story says he was ignorant. Okay, which is also Tamaha. So the tamas he was covered with tamas. And after he did this, he got back his eyesight. So he is supposed to have seen 24 suktas in the Ṛgveda, 140 to 164. Very long, big chunk, continuous chunk of one Rishi is there. And these suktas are known for very riddle-like and multiple meanings and very deep meanings. So, just to give you an example, the 164th one, which happens to be the last Sūkta of this Rishi, in the today's edited first mandala of the Ṛgveda, is called as Aśva. Okay, long Sūkta, 51 mantras, and many commentaries. Just like we have many commentaries of Upanishads, there are many commentaries of even Aśva Sūkta, and each commentaries are different from each other. It is so riddle-like. It is so it has generated a lot of interest all through our history. These Gatama. Now, let me proceed now. This particular Sūkta, which I have decided to show to you, is the 163. Here is a brief summary. Okay. Meanwhile, I use this. So, as I said, this Sūkta has 13 mantras, and the first 11 mantras are only meant for prayoga. The last two mantras are not meant for prayoga, and they also look slightly jarring as a student of learning these things. They actually don't fit with the rest of the Sūkta. And coincidentally, those last two mantras have no prayoga at all. They have no prayoga anywhere. At least in the Shrauta, Grihya and in the Kalpa Sutra, it does not have any prayoga. And here is some summary. The Aśva Yaga is understood as I said, and Sayana, so the most complete and the recent traditional commentary on the Ṛgveda we have today is of Sayana, which is from 13th, 14th century, from the Karnataka Empire. And in the Sayana Bhashya, Sayana's commentary, Sayanacharya does a pratigna at the beginning itself that his view of writing the commentary for the Ṛgveda is Adhi-yajna. His focus is Yajna. Due to various foreign invasions, Yajna's parampara was shithila at that time. It had weakened in India, probably, so he wanted to strengthen that. So his focus on the commentary was Yajna meaning of this. So lot of while that being the pratigna, Sayanacharya also in some of the mantras dwells into the other two points of view. He provides Adi Daivata or the Adi Adhyatma meaning also. And for this particular Sūkta, Sayana clearly has restricted himself to the Adhi-yajna meaning of this Sūkta. That is very interesting. That is something for us to note. And this Sūkta is in the first person. Okay? It is as if the Rishi, the Drashta, is in first person telling this Sūkta. Okay? And also, the Aśva is mostly addressed in Sambodhana. So it looks like there is an Aśva in front. And even in the ritual, and if you see the Kalpa Sutras, the ritual is, this Sūkta is, the horse is brought with full trappings, decorated horse. It is led around the fire 3 times. And before it is led around the fire 3 times, it is made to stand in a specific place in the Yagashala. And during the middle of the Aśva Yaga, you address the horse of the ritual and tell this Sūkta. That is how it is. The Hota will have to tell the Sūkta. And so it is in the first person and Sambodhana, as I said. And the first person thing is interesting. A lot of these things is in Uttama Purusha. Apashyam, the mantra will say Apashyam. I saw. I am seeing. Pashyamo, it says. We are seeing this happening. So it seems to be interesting to see that the mantras seem to relate something that is currently happening. Okay? And then the description, some of the descriptions are very picturesque. I'll show you the details when the screen comes up. For example, it talks of high speed, bright object, flying. It also refers to gliding down. And then it says, while it was appearing in the mist, I could behold the head first. I see the head first. Then slowly I am seeing the rest of the body. And then it says, Aśva, I can see you in the sky. So there are a lot of times in the mantra it says, Divya, Daivya, okay, or Uttamam, Apashyam Uttamam. I am seeing it high above in the sky. And then there is one mantra in the end which also is in plural. So it is Aśva, so it's in plural there. That is very strange, and I'll also show you that. Then it also refers to, describes how the Aśva is flying. It says Aśva is flying, okay, and it doesn't say it is running. It says it's flying, and it has wings, and then it has horns, and then it doesn't look like a terrestrial horse at all. And then it says the Aśva is flying like a swan. Okay, Hamsa Aiva. It says that you can't have a terrestrial Aśva which is flying like a swan. So in Adidevata perspective, it looks like that with this kind of viewpoint, it looks like that the Aśvamedha Yaga, as we understand it, seems to be a reproduction, terrestrial reproduction of something that happened in the sky, that the rishis or the devas or whoever has observed, which is described in this Sūkta. Even though this Sūkta is chanted in the Aśvamedha Yaga, the whole Aśvamedha Yaga, how to do it, what all needs to be done, all that is in the Ṛgveda and in the Kalpa Sūkta. It is not here in this Sūkta. In this Sūkta, those descriptions are not there, so it is very confusing for a student like me to connect them, right? Unless we are able to come to this understanding, it is very hard to connect how that this Sūkta talking about some Divya Aśva, whereas the Ṛgveda, which talks about the ritual of how to be conducted, is all in the ground. And the connection, only understanding we can look at is that there is some Aśvamedha that happened, that the gods did it, the Devatas did a Aśvamedha, they cut the horse in the sky. Okay? Again, I remember Tvashta that I told you. Tvashta is the heavenly cutter, heavenly carpenter or the chopper. So looks like some kind of horse was flying in the sky and it got cut and it fell down to the earth. That is also something that we can understand. And the Aśvamedha Yaga happens to be and there is also a connection to Samvatsara, very strong connection to Samvatsara, which is yet to be investigated. So there are a lot of things in this Sūkta that are yet to be investigated. While what is known is something that I would like to share as soon as the screen comes up. It is in the desktop. And briefly going back to the work that I was referring to, which is the Adhi-Daivata view of the celestial bodies in Ṛgveda. I told you about Dhumaketu. Similarly, there are mantras of Marut, and the Maruts and Dhumaketu, they kind of coexist. The Sūkta which talks of Dhumaketu also seems to be talking of Maruts, and the Maruts are shown in that work, are demonstrated in the Adhidaivata view, actually refer to meteors and meteoric falls and meteoric storms. See, as you know, meteors are, today we know that there are some meteors which are stony meteors, there are some metallic, and then there are some which are made of crystalline silicon kind of thing. And a majority of the meteors appear to be from fragments of comets. Comets actually diffuse over time, they exhaust over time. They go around the sun, and each time they come near the sun, some parts of the comet get dissipated. And when they come close to Earth or any celestial body, planet, they, due to gravity, they disintegrate, or sometimes they break up. Their fragmentation that happens. If those fragments are near the Earth atmosphere, or if the fragmentation happened due to Earth's gravity, then it will get captured by Earth. These fragments, if they are sufficiently big, they end up showing in the sky as a meteor. And if some of them are stony, they survive the fall in the atmosphere, they fall to the earth as a meteorite, and we get those meteorites. Ulka we call it. Ulka is also used, but the word Ulka is not used only once or something like that in the Ṛgveda. So the word Marutaha is demonstrated as the meteors, and it is always used in plural in the Ṛgveda, and it says these meteors, they come in swarms, they come in groups, and they are moving like this. Okay, and then the description is very picturesque, and they are always fiery. They come with fire, so they are bright, and they create a lot of deafening sound. And sometimes we today know about bolide bursts and atmospheric bursts and stuff. Some of the mantras seem to be mentioning those, and it is that I would recommend going through that work, the comets and meteors in Ṛgveda of 2010 of Professor Aśva that I showed you, for those who are interested to check it out. With full details, mantras, explanation, alternative possibilities, all that is discussed in that. There are other names that get associated like Vibhavasu. Whenever I see mantras with meteors, maruts, there is also the word Vibhavasu that is shown. All those details are yet to be investigated. Till now, if there are any questions, we can discuss that right away. If there is something that I will cover eventually, then we can wait. But if about things that I have already mentioned, madam.
Ketu, as you have mentioned, is seen in Ṛgveda under many sūktas. And one of them it says Ketum Krunvan. Okay, sorry. There it is Nana. And I don't know, how do you relate that to this?
Very good point.
And then Deva, Div, is also Dyodhana, that is self-luminant. That comes very closer to what you are saying. Whatever is Divyam could be self-luminant. We can say that. And Aśvam iti Rashtra. When you said Rashtriya, it is there in the Brahmana itself. Aśvam iti Rashtra. So this Aśvamedha used to be performed for the expansion of the kingdom. And I wonder, there were some Aśvamedhas where Aśva was not sacrificed at all, because there is no word cut in any of those mantras. In Saranacharya's work, the word to cut is Adhyahara. As you know, you are aware of that. See, in Vedic terminology, some words are taken or assumed. So this is one among them. See, when there are so many mantras relating to Aśvamedha, to add the word as cut was not difficult. And why it is not there? So it need not be always Aśvamedha with sacrificial rites. That is my observation. Let me see if there is.
No, thank you very much, madam. It is very vicharamaya, intellectually stimulating that you asked. As I said, the 82 occurrences of the word Ketu, it is very diverse. Not everything is celestial. Not everything is physically understandable. Many of them seems to be very abstract. So chasing the word Ketu has to be done with a lot of care, and I agree with you that the word mantra that Madam highlighted, which is so the Ketun Krandvanna Keta Vepesho O Manya Apeshate. So that mantra is actually about jnana. And if you see the Nighantu of Yaska, the word Ketu and many other words, they are all listed under Prajnanamani. Okay, Ketu is not listed under Agni Namani. Okay, so what is this Prajna? Prajna actually is some kind of a flash of understanding. Okay, some Prajnanam, something I knew hidden in my mind, suddenly it has come out. Some sudden darshanam. So I didn't expect this. Oh, is this how it is? So all this is prajnana. And if you remember, Brihad Samhita, I don't know if it is part of the tradition, but Varahamihira says, Ketu is something that I cannot understand. Ganitaihi vijñātum na shakyam, he says. So it comes on its own. And Ketu also in the Amarakosha is listed as a Adbhuta and as a Agni. Okay? And Adbhuta, as we know, the Nirvachana is Abhutam Adbhutam. So I didn't expect, it didn't come in the past. Suddenly it has come. And it is also an Agni. And so this is something that has to be studied in order to decipher the 82 occurrences of Ketus. This particular study that I was referring to studies only 7 of those occurrences where Ketu appears as a compound word, as a Samasta Padam, as a Dhuma Ketu or a Vrisha Ketu, where it is very well demonstrated that it is a comet in those occurrences. But in the rest of the occurrences, it could be a word that was used in different meanings. So that needs to be studied here. And the Aśvamedha question that you raised, that is very true. The Brahmanas and the Prayogas as well as the Bhashya, we don't find it. There is a huge literature, there is a said on Aśvamedha, you rarely find cutting there, or probably you don't. The cutting is found only, as far as I know, in my limited study, in one place, in the 1.162, the Sūkta before this. And it is very grotesque. It is very grotesque. It is unlike now that Madam has asked, and I would later on request her indulgence into in case I forget to give this later, here is Sayana Bhashya for 162. He talks of body parts of the horse, how does the Advaryu lift it, how it has to be boiled, how it has to be roasted and then offered to the Devatas, which part goes where. It's very interesting. But our focus today is the 163. In 163, I hope I covered this introduction. It talks of falcon wings. Let us now zoom in, go to a slightly zoom in version of this, and I'll show you, for example, the first 6 mantras. Okay. So here are the first 6 mantras. If you look at some of the words, I am going to focus only on some. I will not read the whole Bhashya and understanding and interpretation at that extent. If you see Yadakrandaha, so it's very, to me this was very picturesque, very descriptive. Hey Aśva, when you sprung forth from the Samudra and you neighed loudly, okay, Yadakrandaha, how the horse, the ferocious, valiant horse is that, Shuratva, it needs. So that is the Yadakrandaha. Prathaman Jayamanaha is the word. First born is the word that is used. Okay? And Udyan Samudra, Utava Purishat. So the Sayana explains that. What he says is, and Sayana gives a lot of logical reasoning why it should be understood as atmospheric. It is referring to atmosphere. You are born out of the atmosphere, is what this mantra seems to be telling according to Sayana's interpretation. And Prathama is again a very interesting word. So that probably gives the association of the word of Aśva to Agni. Because Agrihi Agniruchyate is the Brahmana Nirvachana. So that which comes first, that which got, so it seems to be referring to a primordial creation in olden days, before we even got created. This is the understanding I as a student am getting when I see that Prathaman Jayamana, before everybody. And the second part of the mantra is also interesting. Shenasya Paksha Harinasya Bahu. Hey Aśva, you have the wings of a falcon and the limbs of a deer. And Harina refers to the golden deer, right? The cheetal or golden deer. And which is bright yellow, golden, swarnam kind of thing. So, what could be a horse which has the wings of a falcon? And the second one, there I would like to focus on Indrayanam Prathamo Adhyatishthati. And then it says Yamena Dattam. Okay, you have been given to us by Yama. Now Yama can mean multiple things in the Vedas. Okay? but definitely a devata. And tritayenam ayu. Tritayenam ayunak. Ayunak means a horse is led and yoked to the chariot, right? So that is yunak. Okay, you were yoked by whom? By Trita. Now, who is this Trita? There are multiple meanings for Trita in the Brahmana itself. Okay, Trita can also mean Vayu. That is what Sayana has taken, and the MPRV, primary reference is MPRV, which is Mysore Palace edition from 1936 to 1960. There is a 36 volume edition by the Mysore Palace of the Ṛgveda. So if they go on to explain more than, they seem to be very interested with the Sayana's interpretation, they give alternatives. Those interested in this should go through. I have a friend whose mother tongue is Tamil, but who learned Kannada only to read this particular book. It's so interesting. And they say that Trita can mean Vayu because he is in three places. Now Trita also, the Trita, the brothers, and there is a story, Vedic story of how Trita fell into the well, is also a parallel to another story where Tvashta falls into the well. Okay, so Trita would be somebody who has three heads or three tongues, Trishikha or Vishwarupa. And we know that Vishwarupa is a Tvashta. Okay, he is a Tvashta's son. So there is some link to the Tvashta here. The Trita shows that there is a link to Tvashta and three-headed thing, three-headed or three hair. Then Gandharvo Asya Rashanam Abhyukan. So the Gandharva held its reins. Who is the Gandharva? Again, Sayana says here Gandharva refers to Soma. Okay, it could be the moon or some celestial body, Soma. And anyway, it goes on. Asura Aśvam Vasavo Niratashta. So the Vasus brought him out of the sun, is what they say. Sura Aśvam Vasavo Niratashta. They brought him out of the Surya. Okay, it came from behind the sun, or it came out from the sun. Is the imagery that we understand. Then the third one, Somena Samaya Viprattaha. So Sama, as you know, is Samvatsara. Okay, Sama is Srilinga. Somena Samaya Viprattaha. Sayana says it could refer to Somena Saha Viprattaha. Okay, but then why is there Sama there? So there is again the book, the Mysore Palace edition goes on to explain what all alternative meanings it could have. So that is something need to be. So there is some connection with Soma. So they say. So it says Gopya. Gandharvo Asya. Okay, there is a Guhyena Vratena. Trito. It's connected to Trita from a Guhya karma, something hidden. You are doing some kirik, some katanak with Trita. So there is some association like that. So there is a connection with Devas from that we understand. Then the next mantra it says there are three bindings. Trinita Ahur Diribandhanan. In sky, there are three bindings to this Aśva. Again, Sayana again goes into explaining a ferocious, really powerful Aśva on the ground. How do they control it? There are three people holding the Aśva always. Gramantara Nayane, Vikrayana, some all very laukika explanation of Sayana, very interesting. How horses used to be led, one person on the right side, one person will hold with a rope on the left side, another reins is held with it behind. So behind again some people will be holding so that it doesn't run off. So here also that imagery seems to be reflected, is what they think. But again Sayana says, I am still not able to understand. So Shastra Dharena Vaktavyaha Arthaha. So he says more needs to be investigated. So Sayana is not conclusive in all his bhashyas. There are a lot of places where he says it could be like this, or more needs to be done on this. Here he says that. That's very interesting. And he says, and it also says, Ahuhu Paramam Janikram. The Janikram of this horse is Paramam, high above. The birthplace of this horse is high above. Then next it talks of horseshoes there. Okay, Sanitur Nidhana, which is horseshoe. Then Bhadra Rashana, very good reins I can see. I can see your head. And then next one it says, number 6, the mantra number 6 is also interesting. Sayana, see if you look at the literal meaning of this, it says, Avo Diva Patayantam Patangam. Patangam means is referring to the horse. It's flying object or something like that. Right? Patanga is flying object. Today we use it for butterflies and insects and all that. And Avo Diva Patayantam, in the present continuous sense, Diva from the sky. Diva is in Apadana there. So from the sky, Avaha is Napumsaka. So it is Avaha is Prathama, is a Dvitiya Vibhakti. That is how he takes it. Avaha Patantam. It is coming down. From the sky it is coming down. This seems to be the literal meaning of the mantra. But Sayana, because he has taken the Adhi Yajna as his Pratigna, he explains this. It can also have another meaning. So Sayana says, he explains this as a horse going up from the earth, because when you sacrifice the horse, the mantra says, hey horse, in fact in 162, the mantra number 18 and 19 and all that, it says, you are now, no pain will happen. I am cutting you with this axe. So the word, very technical words they use. For slicing the ribs, there is a different tool that is mentioned. For cutting something else in parts, another tool is mentioned. So after all this, you will not feel any pain. The gods will protect you and you will go to heaven. Okay, that is the previous Sūkta. So Sayana says he is connecting this mantra to that Sūkta and says this is actually going back. So he does some kind of grammatical interpretation to show the reverse meaning in this mantra. And Shiro apashyam patibhihi sugebhihi patibhihi. So in the divine path, I can see your head in the divine path, coming or going or falling. In this case, patentam. So falling in the divine path. I can see your head coming from top, some head of a cock, whatever. So next, with the next few mantras, Atrate Rupam Uttamam Apashyam. I see your form. Rupam is your form, your body. Uttamam, high above. I see your form in high above. And where do I see it? Jigishamanam, going very fast, straining, strenuously, striving to go fast. That is Jigishamanam. Apade goho, it says. Okay? Asamantat, pade goho. Apade goho is a very interesting word. Literally it means at the cow's foot. Okay? At the cow's foot. I see you, high above, I see you. Exalted view of yourself. At the cow's foot. It can't be a terrestrial cow. And the cow's foot in the sky can be seen. So there is a constellation called Proshtapada. The earlier it has 4 taras. How do we know it has 4 taras? We know from the Vedanga Jyotisha Granthas of the Parashara and Vruddhagarga that it has 4 taras. The Proshtapada, so the first tara that rises, first 2 pair that rise is called Purva Proshtapada. Second 2 that rises is called Uttara Proshtapada, Apara Proshtapada. Today in modern astronomy it is called Bhadrapada. Okay, but earlier name was Proshtapada. Proshtapada refers to cow's foot. And here, and those 4 looks like a cow, and next to that is a something that there is another form in the constellation that looks like a hoof. That's very interesting. Looks like a hoof of a bovine cow. So Apade Goho could be referring to that. If it is in the sky, that is the only Apade Goho that we can think of. Then you are a Oshadhi Rajigaha. You know what? Whenever I offer you something, you will eat up all the Oshadhi, all the plants. You will eat them up. Now this is the imagery that is there in the earlier work that I was reciting, where the Maruts are referred to as Yavasadaha. Okay? So when Maruts come, they fall on the ground and they eat up all the grass. They eat up all the plants, which means they burn up all the plants. Looks like that is the kind of imagery because it is associated with fire. So I see a similarity there in the Oshadhi Rajiga. Hey, you know what? Whenever humans, Marto, Yadate Marto, Anubhogam Anad, Adit Grasishta Oshadhi Rajiga. You go and grab and eat off all the plants. When humans offer, means that in the ground, when you come down to the ground, you eat it. Then there is again I will not go into all the mantra. It says Anutva Ratho, Anumaryo Arvan, Anugam. So all these people, there are various people. It said that cows are following you, all the auspicious things are following you. One of the things mentioned there is something that I noticed. Anuvrata, the Vratas. And Vrata is basically like a swarm goddess, swarm god. And this word Vrata is used in a lot of the Marut Sūktas. Okay, as a group of people that are running behind another devata. It is also a devata, a lower devata perhaps, but it is always comes in group. And vrata is always used in bahuvachana, nitya bahuvachana. And it says, tava sakhyamiyuhu, vrataha, they are following you. Why? They want your friendship. They are running behind you. It's a very picturesque imagery there. And golden horns, it says hiranya shringo, and then metal legs. Okay? Ayo asya pada. And manojava, you walk very fast. There is a reference to fast movement. Then it also says avara indra asi. You are like another Indra, a lower Indra. Then that is the exalted position that is attributed to this flying, what we interpret as flying bright object. Then Irman, okay, here Divyaso Atya, so I just highlighted that. It is again Divya, it is in the sky. And it says how Hamsa iva Shrenisho Yatante. So this is a Bahuvachana actually. Yatante is used. Till now it was in Ekavachana. The moment they introduced Vrataha, after that it has switched to plural. And in plural it says these people, these Aśvas or whatever, or Aśva plus Vrata, because Vratas are becoming his friends. Sakhyamiyuhu. Aśva plus those Vratas together, they are, how are they flying? Yatante is moving or trying or with effort moving. How are they flying? Hamsa iva Shrenisho yatante. So they have a swan formation. They are flying in a swan formation. Now how do these swans fly? They are like a V formation, right? In a group they fly together. There is no, and swans also swan. There is no leader. They keep moving like a wheel. They keep changing wheel. And that wheel metaphor is used in the Marut Sūktas, where these Maruts are coming in a group and they actually move in a wheel, move like a wheel between themselves. And there is no, it says Maruts are all equal to each other. There is no above or below. There is no leader or nothing. Then another mantra, it says, this is the last one, Tava Shrangani Vishtita. Okay? Your horns, and then Sayana goes at length to explain the Shringa. He says, how can horse have Shringa? It cannot have Shringa. So Shringa here is referring to manes. Okay? It is the manes of the horse. It can't even be ears, because it is not Shringe. It is Shrangani in plural. So it could, Sayana says it is mane, the mane of the horse. But how are these manes? They are Vishtita. And Vishtita in Vedic is flailing. When I am moving my arms or moving various limbs, they will flail like this. Okay? Chadapadanta. Ado flutter agutala. So Vishtita. And Purutrani. Okay? And which means they are colorful. They are in different shades. And Jarbhurana. Jarbhurana is another word that is again Vedic. And if you look at where all it is used for fire. Okay? Flame, blazing. Something with the, so the Jarbhurana is used for blazing. So there is a blazing manes of the horse which is flailing, which means it must be quite long. It can't be a short mane. And it's all around. Okay. Now with this detailing, let me now show. Okay. Do we have time for another? Okay. I will finish very fast. I realize due to the switch off. So bear with me with the interruptions. So here is some. There is a, I mentioned already this, where Sayana gives both the meanings. Avo diva patayantam patangam. So he says, Yatva, he says, Yatva yato diva antarikshena margena, diviva patayantam gachantam patangam. Iti, avaha should be taken in Prathama Vidya Vibhakti in the one place, and it should be taken as Panchami in the Apadana in another place. You can't, it's not so easy, but he gives both the meanings because of the yajna. Then Shrangani, I already mentioned this. Shrangani is Shiras, bottom, mantra 11. Shiraso nirgataha shringasthaniyaha keshaha atra ashvasya shringabhavat tadvad unnatani tejamsi parigrihyante. We can also take it as, the radiation coming out of the Aśva. So what radiation comes out of the what tejamsi? The Jarbhurana, Vishtita is should be taken as light, is what Sayana is opining there. And sorry, so therefore the Adhiyajna interpretation concerns which humans should replicate celestial yajna on the ground that I mentioned earlier, and it literally is falling from the sky to down, and Uttama should be taken both as best or above, and Proshtapada is something that I already mentioned. Now here are some photographs that I wanted to show you, where there are some example occurrences. Some of them are recent. I was actually following comet Y4 Atlas. This was in 2020. There was a lot of excitement in the hobbyist community that it could be a great comet of the year, or at least even the decade, because it was supposed to get a magnitude of 4 or 5 when it comes closer to visible to the Earth. But unfortunately it fragmented. So this happens often. Even this year there was a comet that they thought it will come as magnitude 6, but it fragmented, it became magnitude 12. And this was also not visible. Atlas was also not visible in naked eye. Some people claim that they saw it, but at that day when they saw it, it was magnitude 6.5 and they saw it in 7 p.m. Very hard to see at 7 p.m. in the west. So this is, then this is also an actual bolide meteor that screen. I wanted to show you how it goes in groups. There is a head, and then there are groups of trailing fragments bright in the sky. And then there is a Kerala fragment that happened recently. There is a video also of this in 2021. Then there is a very picturesque one during daytime, extremely bright one that this one did not reach the ground. It fragmented and exploded in the sky itself. That would be probably doesn't have too much of heavy material in it, no metal or silica crystals. So this I wanted to show this photograph so that we can relate to what the mantras were telling. And in conclusion, I would like to conclude this way. Even though the tradition does not provide Adhidaivata Paksha for Aśva Sūkta. Why? Because Sayana did not set out to talk about Adhidaivata at all. So we don't have this Adhidaivata explanation in our tradition today. However, it can be interpreted as a phenomenon in the sky. Looks like there was a celestial phenomenon which is alluded to as a birth of a horse in the sky, and it was sacrificed by the Devas. Those descriptions match a moving celestial object which could be a comet, which came down in the form of a meteorite to all the way to the earth and burnt up the Aushadhyaya. Aushadhyaya got burnt up. So therefore, I would like to conclude that a Adhidaivata interpretation is possible for Aśvamedha. There are some references, there are questions. There is a lot of references that we could find in the Puranas, Itihasa, as well as the Brahmanas. This is not published yet. So as of now, it seems to be matching with some of these interpretations.